Hello again. Well, just this a little bit. We are back with another discussion on ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt. This comes to us by way of great courses, audiobooks. I personally purchased this one. I thought it was quite interesting, and I wanted to share my perspective of what's being said. I think once you break it down into common sense terms, is history is nothing to be scared of. Nothing it's nothing to shy away from. The more you know, the more you grow. So we're going to get into this discussion. Again, if you want to find this audiobook and other audiobooks on history, you can check it out on Amazon or wherever you get your audiobooks from. Again, it's great courses. This particular one is the history of ancient Egypt. Presented, the speaker is, what's his name? Bob Bryan. Sorry about that. The Professor Bob Breyer, Academia. So he's telling us about the 13th son of the last Pharaoh and how he basically went on a campaign to get his name out there, let people know, hey, I'm running things now. And that including getting rid of those pesky Israelites. But enough said. Let's listen to what the professor has to say.
For a long time, many people said that Merneptah is the Pharaoh of the Exodus. Just because he is the first one to mention Israel. But remember what I said last time. It is clear from this inscription that he is not talking about the Exodus. He is talking about defeating a group of different countries and peoples outside the borders of Egypt. So Merneptah is not the Pharaoh of the Exodus. I'm really quite sure of it. Now, he does do battle, of course. I mean, he has this victory style, and he says he loves to beat up people. I mean, he likes that. He talks about fighting the Libyans. Now, the Libyans are to the west, and they will become a threat later. And as a matter of fact, in a couple hundred years, you're going to see Libyans ruling Egypt. But now they're not any real power, not a real force to be reckoned with. But remember, to get from Libya to Egypt, to invade Egypt, is a big deal. You're going across a desert, and you can get lost. So it was a big deal to fight the Libyans. And he fights the Libyans, and he defeats them. And on Karnak Temple wall, on a wall at Karnak Temple, he talks about this defeat. And there's an amazing inscription. I'm one of the few people who brings his students to see this inscription. Many of the Egyptian guides, they're very, genteel, and they don't want to show it. Let me explain it. I'll tell you what it says first. Right? It says, the uncircumcised penises of 6,359 Libyans killed were carried off. Now, what does that mean? Right? The ancient Egyptians, in a battle, had army scribes, guys whose job it was to keep track of how many you kill, how many you capture, all that. Now, a battle, of course, takes place on a large field. And imagine it. There's confusion. You have hand-to-hand battle. It's not at a distance. And at the end of the battle, Egypt, of course, has won, right? And you got this field that's strewn with bodies. How do you count the number? It's not easy. I mean, one scribe walking all over the field, 1, 2, 3, or you have 5 scribes calling, and you hope they don't count the same guy. Well, to make it easier, the tradition in Egypt was to cut off a hand. They would hack off a hand, bring it to a central place on the battlefield, pile them up, and the scribes would count the hands. That's how you kept track of how many you had killed. Now, sometimes, if you wanted a big display of your valor and victory, you bring the hands back. You can bring the hands back, and you got this cartloads of hands. I mean, rather gruesome. But that was the idea. You're going to show, I'm powerful, I'm brutal, don't mess with me. Now, somebody may have said, we don't know exactly why the penises are cut off in this particular battle. Somebody may have said, if you bring back the hands, how do we know these aren't the hands of women? How do we know they're the hands of men? Merneptah answered that question. He brought back the penises, right? And notice the inscription says uncircumcised. That's a kind of derogatory thing. The Egyptians considered themselves superior. They were circumcised. The Egyptians practiced circumcision. It was done when a boy reached puberty, not at birth. This was a real sign of being Egyptian. And even, last time we were talking about the Exodus, where did the Jews get the idea of circumcision? It could have been from the Egyptians. Right?
Oh, wow.
So Merneptah is proud of this.
Okay, so y'all heard what he just said. You heard what he just said. Circumcision was performed by the Egyptians. And according to their history, this was going on before the Israelites became the Israelites. Before they had the whole I gotta get out of town thing. Before the Exodus, the Egyptians were doing this. So I touched on Moses, the life of Moses, a little bit from a religious aspect. As far as I know, the Torah is part of the Bible. Some people would like to not include the New Testament with the rest of the Bible. That's your prerogative. But facts is the facts. A lot of stuff in the Bible is not just because of Jewish tradition, but it's more so that the Jews, the ancient Jews, learned it from the Egyptians. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. So let's see what else he has to say about cutting off body parts and let's just keep going.
Battle with the Libyan, where he brings back penises, uncircumcised ones, right? He also builds, he has a palace that he builds in the Delta area at Memphis, the capital of Egypt. But it's gone, it's terribly damaged. And the reason is the Delta. The Delta was a marshy area, right? Memphis is not in the Delta, but it's near enough that the water table is high. So the palace is sunk underground, and all we have are a few blocks now. But it was undoubtedly a great palace. He was a builder like his father, Ramses the Great. His tomb is interesting also. Howard Carter, the discoverer of Tutankhamun's tomb, made an interesting discovery right outside Merneptah's tomb. In a pit, he found 13 large alabaster jars. By large, I mean they're probably 2 feet high, maybe 3 feet high. And technically, they're not alabaster, by the way. It's calcite. Egypt doesn't have true alabaster. It looks pretty good to me, and when it's sold to tourists, it's always called alabaster, but it's really calcite. But these are large jars, and they were used in the mummification of Merneptah before they put the body in the tomb. And they were considered sacred because they were part of the mummification, so they were buried near the tomb. Right? Interesting discovery. 1920, Howard Carter did that. But the tomb is interesting. Merneptah was buried in a fantastic sarcophagus. Fantastic. It was actually 3 nested sarcophagi, one inside the other. Really quite an impressive thing. And they were massive, massive things to protect the body forever. And on his tomb walls was the Book of Gates. It's a magical text that's going to enable the Pharaoh to get to the next world. On the journey to the next world, you're going to have to go through gates. Think about it. An Egyptian temple, you always had to go through a pylon, a gateway. And the idea was the next world's going to be the same, and it's going to be pretty impressive. Not only that, though, there's going to be people who want to keep you out of the gates. There'll be gatekeepers. Mm-hmm. And you had to know the names of the gatekeepers and what was going to happen. It was the secret words, right? And on the walls of the tomb of Merneptah, we have the Book of the Gates. So his tomb is, in a sense, not only going to protect the body of Merneptah, it's going to help him get to the next world. Right? Now, after Merneptah, after the death of Merneptah, we have a strange, strange decline. It's a curious period in the dynasty. Why? Well, let's think of what's happened. Ramses the Great ruled for 67 years. 67 years. Maybe too long. Maybe he can't really lead the army. Maybe the army isn't maintained. But now we get his son. But his son is 60 years old when he gets on the throne. Right? So we've got this problem of older pharaohs. And Egypt almost always goes downhill when the pharaoh lives too long.
Huh. Maybe they should have had a better retirement plan? I don't know. So today's episode, what did you think? Going off to war, cutting off people's hands, cutting off men's body parts, specifically the, little man down there. Hey, that's got to be rough. I hope they was good and dead when they start cutting them parts off. Woo-wee. Anyway, tell me what you think. Let's discuss this in the comment section below. And with that, I will talk to you all later.